Let's start where we should. And for the third consecutive day, President William Ruto has met the third congregation of Christian leaders at State House Nairobi in his attempt to have them sway their flock towards dialogue, especially with the disenfranchised youth who have promised to continue with protests until he yields to all their demands. The church played a critical role in securing President William Ruto's victory in the 2022 general election, and now the president's hope that the men and women of cloth will mediate between him and the youth and hopefully broker a truce, as Bridget Ngana tells us.
Bishops from the African Independent Pentecostal Church of Africa, AIPCA, were the third batch of Christian clerics to visit State House after their colleagues from the Presbyterian and Catholic denominations also visited the House on the Hill. This time, the head of state hoping that the church will intervene in persuading its faithful from taking part in the nationwide anti-tax protests that have since been egged on by calls for government to cut expenditure and scrap off unconstitutional offices that were also budgeted for in the now rejected finance bill of 2024. The president seemingly toning down from his previous speeches by extending an olive branch to the youthful protesters.
I would advise the youth. I know there are so many problems that you are going through, you and your generation, and these problems cannot be solved by destroying what we have.
Na niwaombe hawa vijana wetu tuwaongeleshe. Hawana makosa, ni kukosa namna. Lakini as parents, as leaders, as church leaders, as political leaders, mimi na huyu wabombi, sote tuungane, tuongelesha hawa vijana, tupange vizuri, ili waelewe we have a plan for them.
Next week, the president is expected to convene a national steering committee that will include all representatives from the unions and possibly the leaderless Gen Z's movement.
Tukubaliane vile vile mambo ya expenditure ile ingine yote ya serikali. Pia tukubaliane vile tutakabiliana na mambo ya ufisadi. Ndio tupigane na wakora wote.
However, calls for a ceasefire by a section of religious leaders have also been met with calls for accountability from the church.
Ujumbe wa vijana umefika, uliotuwakilisha sisi sote, lakini hapa palipofika tusiendelee kuiharibu nchi yetu ya Kenya.
Tunapoendelea kufanya maandamano kwa sasa, basi tujue kwamba tunahatarisha maisha ya wengine na biashara na hata utendaji kazi wa watu.
Nawe mwanasiasa, speak the truth, ambia watu ukweli. Kama huna pesa uambie huna pesa, usiahidi watu mambo ambayo hayatafanyika.
This week has seen an online movement dubbed #OccupyChurches successfully cancelling fundraising events where politicians and their spouses had been invited. The movement has petitioned church leaders to deplatform politicians from speaking at the pulpit. On Saturday, a fundraiser at Kaharate Catholic Church in Murang'a County, where the deputy president was to preside over, was cancelled after public outcry, and the event was moved to a nearby public school.
Because the church is the conscience of the nation. And now that the president has started that engagement with the church leaders, tuendelee na hawa watoto wetu na viongozi, and we'll come up with a good country.
The protests are said to continue next week despite calls for dialogue. Bridget Ngana, NTV, Nakuru.